Okay, I thought we'd try something out with some hybrid inks, and kind of in this otherworldly palette, but not something that you wouldn't see in real life either. But a lot of times when you think about the colors being used here, you wouldn't really think of it as being something kind of in the natural world. And that's a palette of some really bright pinks and purples here. You can see it like in twilight or something like that in the right area and circumstances and time of day, etc. And I don't think I'll get anywhere close to it. That being said, but we'll give it a try here. Now, one of the things that I'm just learning about with some of these hybrid inks is, okay, now my tendency is to work with dye-based inks, working from light to dark, but let's try something of going with the darker tones and then blending the lighter tones into it. The hybrid inks tend to sit on the surface of the paper more than dye-based inks. Dye-based inks stain. Now, that being said, I'm wondering if I should go with the matte side of my paper as opposed to the glossy. Maybe. Let's try it on matte and just see how this works. All right, now, I haven't been using hybrid inks very long at all. I'm talking about like a week or, what is that, 2 or something like that? And I am really just kind of learning about them right now. And the thing that I've kind of found so far is they feel like dye-based inks when I'm going in here. I mean, this is, like in the paper right here, but I find that they really build up on the surface by the time you get into those, I don't know, multiple layers. The pulp of the paper tends to get pretty saturated, and there's a buildup of ink where you can kind of move it around, almost like, I don't know, the thing that I liken it to a little bit is something like a dry medium, like chalks or pastels. It feels that way to me a little bit. I don't know, I don't know, my reference point. I mean, it's not exactly that, but that's as close as I can describe it, talking about coming from a wet medium. It just doesn't feel that wet and absorbent, I guess, because it isn't. By the time you start building it up, the paper kind of reaches super saturation, and you just build up that media on the surface. Okay, now, I kind of have an idea of a general composition that I want to use on here. I'm just applying this with a paper towel. It's starting to shred on me a little bit, especially when I come on the edge and I go over that edge. It's kind of fraying it a little bit, but so be it. Alright, so let's go with something like that. That is really kind of I don't know what, not resolved, to say the least. It's really rather horrific looking, right? And it looks that way to me. I don't know where this is going or how these things are going to blend in, so we'll see where it goes, okay? I just see this as a base layer foundation. I know these things build up, so I'm hoping I can kind of resolve this a little bit. I'm just going for this kind of amorphic sky, alright? Just with all these different colors. And it should look a little bit more kind of flat. I'm not going for this deep space type of texturing in here like I normally would with dye-based inks, where I want it to look more and more saturated. I do want this to look saturated, but I don't want it to look super deep, okay? I'm going for more of like this kind of painted surface look, because I think these hybrid inks are really great for that. But let's see what I can do here. Okay, by the way, this was Lunar Lilac. And this one is, it's kind of like a plum, planetary purple. Okay. Even those colors out right here as if, in case you want to try this. I guess you'll wait to see, you know, what it looks like. Well, and I'll put the intro of this video on here, but, you know, if you don't like what you see, you're not going to be kind of sitting here watching this, I would guess. Unless you want to kind of see how the disaster was put together, if it ends up being that way. But if it's a disaster, so be it. I don't know if disasters are fun, but I don't know. It's kind of a fun process, you know. Laying this down here, it's kind of like finger painting to me. I'm trying to leave some of these areas light, or the white of the paper. Okay, here comes this really super bright pink. I'm starting to feel the colors building up in these areas that are really coated. You can use whatever method you want. You can try scrubbing around like this. This looks pretty good here. It's kind of giving me a little bit of a tinge of that, you know, kind of a feeling of someone's fingernails across a dry chalkboard. It's because this is matte paper here. You can use glossy. I just wanted to try matte on this one, considering the look maybe that I was going for. I really don't know exactly what look I'm going for. I just have a general kind of color scheme in mind, but yeah, it is kind of scrubbing over this, you know, dry type of surface here. In general, I have a pretty light touch with this hand going on here, okay? And I'm trying to go with kind of repetition in terms of my application, more than pressure, to get a darker, more saturated application. All right, well, all right, now here's a little bit more interesting part to me. Okay, I'm going to go with the clean part of my paper towel. I was thinking about using, you know, that pink one and dipping into this white right here. I'm still not used to really doing that, but that's what these are for, so you can kind of mix these two colors together. I mean, maybe I will, but let me just go with some pure white here first. A little bit more of a conservative approach than those pads would kind of, you know, the concept of the pads, you know, I don't know what I'm trying to say, lend themselves to, okay? You're supposed to dip right into them and not worry about it. Okay, so I'm adding some of this white into these areas. Now this is where it really starts to feel like kind of pastels to me, or something like that. I guess it's because of the straight pigment ink here. I mean, it definitely takes on a spirit of kind of more of a, I don't know, kind of painted look, I guess. I feel like pigment inks are kind of paint-like, right? But see this white right here, it really flattens out the space. It definitely looks a lot more two-dimensional. I guess maybe it's because we're so aware of the texture that this leaves on the surface. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm starting to pick up some of that other tone too. That's, you know, these other colors that are underneath it. So I'll just take that right into this pad, and if some of it transfers, then yeah, that's fine. I'll just kind of wipe it off. Kind of filling this area in down here that I've left light, and I've left it light for the different images that I'll try using in here in this background. Kind of filling it in. I want this to be, pretty covered surface area. So I am getting rid of a lot of the remnants of what used to be the page here. That's the card paper surface. It's kind of like an abstract, I don't know, a bad abstract painting. Trying to go for some variation here and there. Go a little bit, thicker areas in some areas. I don't know. I'm trying to give a little bit of gesture too. Not well done, but or not terribly successful, but kind of working on that a little bit. You kind of, I don't know, they always used to say in painting, you want to get the, the feeling of your hand or whatnot. It'd be better if, I was more kind of practiced at this, but, I don't know, just a little bit of, so-called brush work kind of incorporated in here. Okay. Ew, that's not so good. I see. I'm starting to run out of paper towel here. Area. Alright. Okay, something like that. Let me try something. Let me go back into the ink here now. Let me see what that looks like. Oh, that's, okay, that looks pretty good. Coming back into it with some of that ink. Some of that hybrid ink back into there is kind of interesting. It gives me a different tone of that pigment ink. So I guess naturally you can get all kinds of different variations of whatever pigment ink you happen to be working with by just adding some of that hybrid ink into it. Okay, that seems like it's smoothing it out a little bit. So that looks pretty interesting. This is definitely feeling like a, pretty decent slathering of this. It's really getting built up, as you can see. You know what I mean? Doesn't it? It feels like a, I don't know. It feels like a painting, and they say that things like oil pastels are really painting. It's more than drawing. It's just the pigments are in a different stick form, like oil pastels, as opposed to a liquid form with more paint. But okay, I like what I'm seeing now. Yeah, you know what I mean? You have to kind of get it built up, I think, in order to slather that around. Now it feels like I'm taking like a thing of lipstick or something like that, just with this color, and kind of going back into it. That's a pretty bright color there. I wonder if it'll kind of mellow out. Not that I want it to. I kind of like that. You can take that and you can kind of smooth it out too. I guess you can do all kinds of different things with this. Let me try to go back to this. I'll never remember all these. Planetary purple. Okay. Let me try some of that planetary purple on here. It'll be mixed with a little bit more pinkish one though. Okay, there we go. starting to look like Jupiter to me or something. Except purple, not orange. Some of these little bands, you know, like that big, whatever that storm. Okay, alright. That's a little bit more, I don't know, kind of defined. And kind of what I was going after. Alright, now, let's see if I can stamp some imagery on here. I'm kind of inclined to kind of change up here and use some imagery that I think would be a little bit more conducive for this. You know, doing something a little bit bolder, but I'm going to stick with my plan here and just see how this comes out. Alright, now, I've been working with set number 10, and it's kind of nice working in kind of groupings like this, because when I'm formatting my videos, all the designs are already kind of typed out. I just do a copy and paste. But set number 10, Country Chapel, Curvilinear Roads and Trees, Sedge Filler, Sedge Cluster, Sun. I'm not going to use the sun in this one, but okay, now here's the thing. Dye-based inks is not going to stamp over this. You know, it has too much pigment ink down there. I think the VersaFine could work. I've had kind of the white pigment ink kind of bleed through the VersaFine before that I've done in the past. I mean, it could look interesting, though. But I'm going to go with that hybrid black. It seems to hold up fairly well, okay, over the top of such a thickly coated application of that media. Okay. Let's use the Curvilinear Road that comes in this set, and I haven't used it in the past couple videos here. Alright, now this is why I left this area light down here, is because I planned on stamping this imagery down there. And hopefully it shows up over the top of this, all this white pigment ink. On something like this, if it doesn't show up real well, and the media's not working out like I want it to, I guess I could theoretically just cover it up with some more of these and go with different types of images, maybe some more bolder images, and just stamp right over these impressions, but hopefully they're not attempted impressions. Hopefully it works out fine. Alright, giving it a little bit more time in terms of pressure, stamping in this, because I am stamping into a kind of a thick, wet paint area. And, okay, it works out fine. I'm shocked, you know, it works out so well. Because normally stamping over pigment ink doesn't look great, you know, that great in terms of certain types of media. Okay, here's the chapel. And I might have to do a little bit of masking, which I don't really feel like doing, because I don't want to put anything over that, because this is probably a little bit wet right now, but you know, I'm not going to stop this process right now. I want to investigate this scene without waiting for everything to potentially dry. Alright, here's the chapel. And I'm just going to eyeball it. Okay, so the chapel is right here. I'm going to put my finger right there, and I'll put it roughly, kind of like where that road leads to. So, you know, so something over here. Just a light masking of with some paper towel. Kind of under masking a little bit too. And we'll put this over here, I guess. I don't know if I even went over my masked paper towel. I probably didn't even go over it. Okay. Kind of like that. I missed a little bit with that road, but that road's going to the shed or whatever. Or, you know, this is the road that goes past it. Who knows? Okay, let's get some additional trees put in here. Yeah, that stamped out okay. I can tell there was a really thick slathering of that white paint behind my trees, and the trees are a little bit kind of fish-eyed, you know, that's not a real smooth application of it, as if it were, you know, like on just straight paper, you know, but stamped over the top of all that pigment ink right there in the center. I'm not complaining. I'm just glad that it looks, you know, as crisp as it does. I think it looks okay. All right, here's some additional trees. Well, let's put this one right here in the foreground like this. This is the tree cluster small. Okay. Let's go over here with this one. Okay, something like that. All right. Let's go with a real super complex mask. And when I say that, I'm joking, of course. Here's a paper towel here, covering up that road in the background like that. Okay. And then I'll cover up some of these trees right here. I don't really need to cover up, you know, the areas of the trees that are real dark right there. But I'm just going to take this now, and I'll just stamp it like that and get some background trees going in there. Okay, see that right there? Fairly dramatic looking, I think. Let's put another tree down here. Get another one maybe over here. Okay, kind of creates a little bit of foreground and a visual lead-in. Okay, now let's see what I can do here. I think I'm going to use... I don't know if I'm going to use my paper towel here. I might use a stylus tool to do a little bit more coloring in. Alright, I just feel like using this, alright? I've been using a lot of paper towels and stuff like that, but let's use a little bit of the stylus tool here. I'm just going to have a little bit more control over it. You can use, I don't know. Here's some applicators like this. I haven't used them yet to, you know, to do a little coloring in, but use a sponge, cosmetic sponge. I don't know, whatever. Paintbrush would be great. Okay, so this stamped out pretty good down here, but what I like to do is I'd like to reiterate some of the shadow areas with some additional ink. And I usually do it with color, but yeah, let's go ahead and use some color. Okay, I'm here to experiment with this media. All right, I was thinking about just going on straight with black, but let's go ahead and use some of this color right here. Okay. It's one of the darker tones used in this color scheme, right? So let's try it, okay? Just using a stylus tool here, okay? And I'm going to use it on its edge for the most part, okay? I usually don't use it like that, okay, for its entire... I'm usually doing more things like this with it. And I'm doing it very lightly, too, okay? Don't scrub back and forth with these types of things. You know, go nice and easy on your media. Okay, now see what I'm doing right here? There's a shadow on the Curvilinear Road, right? And what I'm doing is I'm just reiterating it with the color, darker color, of the color scheme that I'm using. So I'm reiterating shadows like that. And see how that makes it a little bit more dimensional? Where can you see the shadow coming around here? That defines the edge of this road, the side of the road. Let's do that again with this darker tone. Okay, so you don't always have to use black. You can just kind of use your colors. Can you just really kind of just dry brush it on? People kind of go too fast a lot of times and kind of run into difficulty and they say, oh my god, it's so hard. But it's really not hard if you're laying down color like that. Look how light that is. I mean, can you even see it? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. See that? When you're going that slow, it's really hard to kind of mess up because each tap is almost invisible. It's hard to see what you're doing, but you just have to kind of go, it just takes like 10 taps or something like that. You get kind of the muscle memory going too. You just have to kind of get used to using less ink and going with more repetition. You know, if you're used to coloring something with a, you know, a marker or something like that, you get the full true version of the color immediately after setting it down. But if you're just going with a very light tapping of some ink that you're using, like that, see, the more you do it, the darker it gets, but then you can go down to all those light tones like that, okay? And that's what I'm doing in my applications of media. See right here? It's barely visible. And then I just want more, so I'm just going to keep tapping more, and that's how it keeps building up color, but it's like a really light shade of it at any given time. Think about it like you're applying dry media or something like that. You know, it's kind of like that. You just kind of keep building it up a little bit at a time. Underneath some trees. Works great for shadows. See how I kind of darkened in this area right here? It sets the chapel into the scene. Right now the chapel I'm going to actually darken a little bit too. I'll put it in a little bit of shadow, and there's a darker side to the chapel, so I'm just reiterating that, okay? Okay, alright. One thing that's occurring to me is I think I can use some of the lighter tones too down here, if I want to. Let's try something. Let's bring a little bit of this color, that dark purple color, and let's do what they have these pigment ink pads here for. It's just to kind of mix some of that in there. It hurts to go into kind of a white pad, but especially when it's brand new with some color like that, it just goes against, you know, most of what we've been practicing, you know, in terms of our usage of media. Okay, let's see if I can get kind of a lighter version here of this purple in this area right here. Oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm saying it's darker right there. It's because that impression of the black down here is still wet, so I just blotched it. Okay, here, I'm gonna have to do something. That's what experimentation is about. Let me get some of this color off of here. Let's just go on straight white. Okay, kind of. I don't know. There's going to be some color on that, but that's all right. Okay, there we go. See that right there? We'll just come in with some white right over the top of it. It's kind of interesting dealing with, you know, some degree of, you know, or a medium that's a little bit closer to maybe opaque than transparent. I'm so used to using dye-based inks which are transparent. Okay, so here's this going in there. That kind of looks like a rounded form now, right? Looks pretty good. Let's try to use some more of this white here. Let me illuminate this road a little bit here. Come into it with this white like that. trying to think of where else. Okay, let's see. I'll try to create this little ridge here of lighter value. Okay, here's that little road going into the distance. I'll try to put a little bit down there too. Okay, looks something like that. Let me get a little bit of this white down in this area. It seems like it's missing something. Since this one has, you know, some of that white on there. Now this does have somewhat of a... It feels like somewhere something in between, like say stamping and maybe painting or something like that, when you're dealing with these kind of opaque kind of applications here, and so much pigment ink, which reminds, you know, pigment ink to me reminds me of paint more than just, you know, most of the inks out there. Okay, let's try something up here too. Let's add some of this little touch up here, a little frosting of media. Looks pretty good. See that right there? I don't know if you can tell. It kind of softens it up a little bit. So I'll kind of put some of it up here in the sky to maybe contrast against some of the more brush looking strokes that were done with the paper towel applications. I feel it's really building up on here. This white pigment ink is going to dry much darker looking than what it looks like right now. So I am going with a little bit, or I'm trying to add a little bit more than what I think will be kind of the ideal amount. Alright, now as I'm doing this, why don't I add some of this pigment ink down here like I often do to give these areas a little bit more kind of variation. I'm a little bit worried about it because I don't want them to blob on me. These trees, you know, that are stamped in black, especially if they aren't dry yet, I think they look okay here. I don't see, I'm kind of picking up some of it. I have to have a lot of ink on here, I think, so it doesn't smear. But this is kind of giving those images down there a little bit of variation to make it look like light. I can't do too much because it's not real light down there. So it's just kind of, there's a little bit of diffusion going on, more than it looks like white light. It's too kind of murky for that. Okay, I think that looks about right. Something like that. Okay, now, to me, this is how I clean off the that white pigment ink side of it. They just show to just kind of wipe off like this. And, you know, there's always white pigment ink re-inkers. So they say don't sweat it. They say that after a lot of usage, though, things can get rather polluted on this side, which will happen. But hopefully that's not too soon. Okay. And, you know, it's good to go. And plus, it's the dedicated one for that color, so you shouldn't really worry about it too much. Okay, so this is, I want to go for some crisp textures in here, so I need to clean off my toothbrush here, as it's kind of crispy from my last application of some Dr. Martens. Okay, I have my toothbrush nice and clean. If you hear some screaming in the background, I apologize in this video. It's the weekend, and there's kids over playing video games. I started this video because they were outside doing stuff. But then they always seem to migrate wherever I am at, or near. And I don't want to tell them to be quiet. As they're having a great time, as am I. Alright, so, anyway, this is some Dr. Martens Bleed Proof White. It's an opaque white watercolor paint. And I think it would look really good up here. There's a lot of this amorphic, real soft types of applications of media. And I just think this will provide a really crisp texture in here to complement that look in there. So let's see how it goes. Okay. Just your splatter painting technique, you know, no different than, you know, what kids are doing in probably kindergarten or whatever. I think that's when we did it, you know, when I was a kid. I don't know, maybe it was later. I remember we did something like this on a little reading nook, and I think it was third grade or something. It's this big, huge box, and the kids took a vote of what we should call it. It was like one or two kids can go in this big, gigantic box, and it ended up being Ziggy's Corner. Do you remember that old cartoon Ziggy? If you're old enough, you might remember Ziggy. Alright, now, that's up in the sky. Do I want to bring it down? I was going to put it over everything, but I think I like it just up in the sky there. Well, a little bit went into my trees, but let's just leave it as stars. I was going to have it as snow, but let's not. I think that looks pretty good as is. Alright, so look at that. Isn't that a good compliment to the that background up there? I don't know. It's just that crisp element that I thought it was kind of lacking. Everything was somewhat soft, so. Okay, now, this is a Strolling stamp. It's that's the name of the stamp. I think I'm going to put those characters down here. I wasn't quite sure if I had room, but I think it would look pretty interesting to have them down there, especially in the context of this sky. It seems like the kind of fantastical? I don't think that's a word. But the sky here, okay. I'm looking at, I keep flipping it because I'm wondering if his hand is going to go over that darker edge right there, and it might, but I don't know, my block here is so opaque. Okay, I'm going to just do it. Alright. I have them way down at the bottom. Alright, light even pressure. Don't use the same pressure that you used with larger stamps, you know, when you get down to the small ones. Oh, okay, perfect. I know it would turn out that way. I didn't. Looks pretty good. They stand out pretty well too, because I've used a lot of that white pigment ink over there, so see, doesn't it stand out quite a bit like that? Look how crisp they are. I don't know, I guess I'm shocked, kind of. I don't know, I'm shocked, but surprised, because I don't know, I would have thought the VersaFine would be the perfect media for that. And might be fine, but that hybrid ink works really good on there. I know these hybrid inks have been around for years, but I don't know. I didn't even know what they were hybrid of. You know, not too long ago. Okay, I'm going to put another fresh impression down here of this tree just to create a little bit more depth. It occurred to me that that tree over here was kind of obscured in a little bit of that pigment ink. I thought I can go for a little bit more depth down here with a, you know, just a crisp black impression of that tree, which I think it did okay. I don't want to go here because that's saying that the tree would be on the road. Okay, now another thing that I was really wanting to do, there's a huge open area in that sky. And I could put, you know, branches or something like that coming in or up here. I think it's too high though. So I was thinking a quote would be really good for that. And I thought that there's this one, music in the soul can be heard by the universe. I don't know. I'm going to pause right here. I'm going to look through my Scenic Sentiments and see if I can come up with something. Maybe something that has something to do with color. Okay, I think I have one that might be better for this one. From a visual standpoint, it could. This is such a big open space. This one would be better if I had it in bolder text, but I've kind of made it for a card size, quarter size page, you know, scene, or the interior of a card. But this one's heaven is under our feet as well as over our heads. I mean, it's not perfect for this one with, you know, this sky up here and the figures down here walking, so I don't know. It seemed appropriate. In terms of theme for this piece, I'm trying to find a good spot for it up here, though. I dare not put it at an angle like that across that. That would look terrible. Maybe I'll put it down here. It would look good up here, too, but I have that dark band up here. And I just don't know if it would show up enough. Just go midway. Okay. I can add some more in there, too, but I don't feel like doing that at this point in time. Okay, let me make sure that inking that up enough. I mean, I could put it, you know, on another piece of paper and then put it down here, but I'm just going to incorporate it all into one piece. Okay, just getting some test prints here. Kind of these little finishing touches I hit, you know, if it's an animal or something like that, it really doesn't matter, but when talking about text, it's always a good idea to, you know, have it somewhat somewhat straight. If it comes out crooked, then so be it. Or lopsided, I don't know. I'm always seeming to tilt slightly. Oh, okay. I'm always pleasantly surprised if I do get it, because I think I don't more often than I do. I think that's fairly straight, isn't it? There it is, right there. I might need to bring in something. This is... Oh! I think I can do something right here. Okay, this is looking a little bit imbalanced to me, but I think I can bring in a little bit of this black here to just kind of darken, you know, a little bit of the top corners, at least, you know, because it's somewhat open right here. I want to close my composition slightly. Okay, let's take some of this black in here like this, and bring in a little bit of visual weight to the top of the scene to kind of cap it off a little bit more. Actually, it looks pretty good too, doesn't it? that. There was a lot of purple in here. I don't know, maybe it became a little bit too monotonous. Okay. Actually, what this is doing too is that when you go a little bit darker in a certain area of a scene, or a piece, it doesn't have to be a scene, then your lighter areas seem lighter by contrast. So if you want this area to stand out a little bit lighter, then you make these areas a little bit darker. This is really fun too, because you know, when you start bringing in, you know, some of this additional tone over all of these inks that you've already laid down, in terms of these hybrid ones, that those inks are really on the surface. So I find that these ones that I'm laying down over already a thickly kind of slathered surface right there, they really blend very nicely. See, it goes like that, but if I just kind of stay there, it really blends out nicely. And I guess it's because that hybrid ink, that a lot of that ink is on the surface, so when you go over it like that, and if you stay there, don't do it in like 2 strokes or something like that, but if you just stay there, it just kind of blends right in. It probably makes the other inks that you've already laid down go back into solution a little bit, meaning they kind of re-wet, and they just blend out really beautifully. That for me is the real fun part of these inks right here, is getting into the first ones. It's like that chalk, you know, on a chalkboard or something like that. It's so dry. But then as you kind of blend it in, you reap the benefits from, you know, how much ink you've laid down underneath it when you get into these latter applications. And it could be something like, it could be a lighter color too. Unlike dye-based inks, you really can't go back to light, because you put a light blue over a dark blue, and it's not going to make that look light blue in that area. It'll look, you know, just nothing or darker. But here you can actually kind of go back into it. Okay, so that's how that's kind of coming along. Okay, I found something here going back into black over white. That looks okay. So I'm going to just keep adding a little bit more. I think it's kind of resolving some of this area up here. And it looks, I don't know, doesn't it look more complete to you? Down here it feels a little bit different because I didn't put a lot of this other ink built up in here. Remember, I kind of left that area kind of light. So I feel like I'm dragging. It's not really doing as much as up here that has a really thick coating of, you know, kind of a paint-like surface. Or you can think of it like pastels or something, like oil pastels. That's what it feels like, you know. And if you go over it, it, you know, blends it out more. Okay, that's looking really... That's looking like a nice application. But boy, that background paper sure did look ugly with that first couple colors that I laid down. You know. But if you just kind of stick with it, I'm finding so far that you can kind of get an interesting kind of look. It's just you have to see those first few layers as your foundation layers that you won't be able to see too much. Alright, so I went pretty dark up there, but see that right there now? I think that caps it off really good up there. And, okay, now, here's the thing. I've blotted out a lot of that white up there, like in those areas, so there's lighter tones of that white ink in those areas. See like that? So I could come back in with another kind of layer of this if I want to. Let me just try that and see what it looks like. So we can have multiple colored stars or whatnot up in those areas, which is kind of good because it gives things a little bit more dimension. And we do see, you know, out in the night sky, you do see dim stars and brighter ones, right? Closer in proximity, age of star, whatnot. Okay, let's see what we can do here. Alright, I think that's... don't go overboard. Alright, that's a pretty fun little look or method, whatever you call it. Okay, white acrylic paint pen. Let's go for some little details with this. Shaking that. There's that little ball inside. I've been using this pen a lot. I didn't think it would replace my white gel pen as much as it has, but I find that it just seems to go on over things a little bit easier than the gel pen, especially something like this that has all that pigment ink down there. If I was kind of rolling a gel ball pen down there, it might roll up into the gel. I'm not getting rid of my gels because of those, you know, I don't have colors of this one like I have pink and whatnot in the gel pen form, which will look great on here. I'll use it on here too, but as far as the white goes, this one works pretty good. And these are extremely inexpensive too, but you have to kind of buy them in like a pack of 10 or whatever, 5, 10. They're so cheap they don't even sell them individually. They're probably about $1 each or so. Okay, I'm putting some little highlights on some of this chapel around the steeple and areas that are light on the stamp. I'm just kind of reiterating that a little bit more. It kind of makes it stand out in terms of lighting slightly. This isn't completely opaque, it's a little bit more translucent, but let's see, let's put a little... it gets pretty dark in here, so there's not a lot of white light, so this really stands out. So maybe I won't put too much everywhere. Anywhere where it's kind of light, I'll reiterate a little bit with some little dots. There's not a lot of light in here, so I'll be careful. You know, I'm going to be somewhat careful about this. Otherwise, it looks kind of weird. Maybe you can put little highlights on some of your trees. Yeah, around the tops of some trees, it kind of gives them a little bit of dimension. Okay, if you want a little bit of a brighter star in your sky somewhere, go like something like this. Just draw one in like that. I kind of group my stars a little bit. Right, a little bit more kind of varied texture working in here. Let's kind of bring a little bit of a diffusion or glow to a couple of these stars. Okay, white, just a cotton swab, Q-tip or whatever, and really blot some of that off. Okay, you want to go with a real dry brush application of this. And let's see, I'll dab some of this over a couple of these little dots in here and make those dots kind of look like they're glowing, which looks like a glowing star. Gives it a little bit more kind of personality. I mean, you can go crazy and put this over a lot of them. I usually use it somewhat sparingly, unless they represent like little snowballs or something like that, and I really want a lot of them to stand out. But otherwise, I kind of, I'm a little bit more selective most of the time. Sometimes I think it looks great, just going nuts with it. Let's see that one right there. So those ones in there really stand out now more than the others. I usually put it over some of my larger stars, but over some of the smaller ones looks good too. Look at that. See, doesn't it give some good variation up here? Here's that, and that one. Let's go a little bit brighter on this one, because like I said, the pigment ink does dry darker, so you have to kind of make it stand out a little bit more. Okay, so let's see what we can do here. Let's take here's some paint pens right here. This is a pastel pink gel pen. Let's see if the gel pen stands out. I don't know, over this hybrid ink, who knows? Well, I don't know, I think that one's going to show up here. It looks fairly dark against that background, but it looks pretty good. It's just a little pink dot. I don't know if you can see those. I'm not going to use a lot of it, but see that right? That one's pink. So, I mean, it goes within this color scheme, right? So why not utilize that up here? Okay, this is rolling on really nicely, especially over all that white pigment ink. I think the white pigment ink is kind of setting up. Maybe it sets up faster on, matte cardstock, where I'm oftentimes using glossy. This looks pretty good though on matte, doesn't it? I don't know if I can tell the difference, between matte and glossy when you start, smearing white pigment ink around, because the white pigment ink, smeared around doesn't look glossy anymore anyway. And the blending looks, really nice, and this isn't like a glossy cardstock either. It's just, this isn't a matte cardstock. This is glossy cardstock on this side, but this side is not coated, so it's just more like matte paper. I'm trying to shake this up. I haven't used this pink paint pen in a long time, and the paint is it's not mixed up real well. Let me see what and it's a little bit lighter than the gel pen. Okay, actually that looks pretty good. If you have like a little pink crystal or something like that, or white one, real small, or little silver things, you can put them up here in the sky and really embellish it. Wink of Stella pen, put it over one of these little dots, or here and there, give it some shimmer maybe. Okay, this is the violet paint pen, Sharpie paint pen. I picked these up at like Michael's or something. Okay. Alright, hey, that was a lot of fun. Look at those textures up there in that sky, huh? So, hybrid inks. They give a different look, that's for sure. Potentially. That first layer, though, it just really felt like a dye-based ink, but they kind of build up, and then of course I went over it with white pigment ink into it, and then I added, then I went back to some of that hybrid ink and put it over the pigment ink. And then I don't know, then, flip back and forth, and, I came up with some black and blended it in. So I don't know, I like the circular kind of process of this, Usually in dye-based inks, you got to go dye-based inks, and if you add in pigment ink over the top of it, you don't really go back and add dye-based inks over the top of it, but the hybrids allow, a certain type of freedom to that. All right, so these little characters down here, going in here. I would like a little bit more misty type of touch. Okay, let me see. Being that this is kind of set up a little bit more, let me go back in here and try to add a little bit more of this in here. I hope I don't go overboard with that because this is a matte paper. All right. If I dab this down on glossy and I don't like it, I just wipe it off. But on this and then over the top of these hybrids, I better be a little bit more careful about this. So let me get a feel of it. Okay. First, we're just using a really light touch. Okay. And then okay. Let me try to hit that area right in there a little bit more. Like there's some kind of this mist down there at the end of the road. Kind of makes it a little bit more magical too. Like that. As I lay that down, it's a certain type of value, and then as I sit here, I mean, like 10 seconds later, I can tell it's getting darker as it dries and sets up. So let's try to keep adding a little bit more, like that. See that little bright area back there? I think that's kind of nice at the end of the road. And then I like putting the chapel in this little bit of illumination right back in here. Okay, so something like that, I think. Right? Like I said, that's a little bit too light right in there, but it'll set up and it'll dry darker. Okay, so that is that. Let's take a look at this again. I don't know, can you see all those little colored gel pen dots up there, or paint pen dots? There's multi-tones in there. This almost looks bluish to me, huh? And I didn't use it at all. It's just that white pigment ink laid over the top of it. It looks blue to me here too, in front of this, not just on the screen for some reason. Who knows, with all that blending that kind of takes place in there, what comes about from all that. But multiple layers of the Dr. Martens as well. For a little bit more depth in that sky. It's a little bit more deep in terms of space than I would have thought. I mean, that lettering there looks like it's hovering in that space to me. I thought things would look flatter looking, but I said you can make it look that way, but when you start kind of adding these other little effects in here, it kind of gives that nice little, I don't know, illusion, I guess. Darker impressions right here, okay? Not gone over with the pigmenting. See, that's getting a little bit better. It was a little bit too light. Now it's kind of mellowing. It's sitting back in that scene there, so it looks more like that. I think it looks okay. Okay, so anyways, like I said, each time, I play around with these inks, I'm learning a little bit more and more. There's a lot more experimentation that can be and will be done with those hybrid inks. Really enjoying it. Nature set number 10. I think I'll be moving on from that. Oh, I forgot I was going to do this composition right here, or that set in a photo stamping piece. Anytime I get, you start using these new media, I kind of get obsessed with whatever I'm working on. just like I did with photo stamping there for a little bit and whatnot. But anyway, here's a different look for that nature set number 10 if you guys have that. And the larger chapel set works really good too. It's the same basic things, but the nature set number 7 has the larger version of this, but you can use it. It just doesn't come with a road. But certainly all these types of things, you know, play around with it and have fun. You can do these types of things in pastels, you know, this look, dye-based inks, colored pencils, you know. I've seen people do colored pencils and whatnot, just kind of working the right process with colored pencils. You don't want to lay down a bunch of waxy things and think, oh, I want to stamp over it. I guess you can with like a StazOn or something like that. I don't know if, how hybrids or something like that would even stamp over wax. So anyways, yeah, you can go for this different type of look in all kinds of different media here with the sky and whatnot. That kind of amorphic look up there, nebula, whatever, colored gases or whatnot. But anyways, it's all really fun, and again, this is you know, another good example of multimedia. You know, what do we use? We used hybrid inks in here, pigment inks, gel pens, white acrylic paint pens, Dr. Martin's bleed-proof white opaque watercolors, Sharpie paint pens. Did I say that one yet? And it's all fun stuff, you know. You can play around with and use different media for kind of their strengths and whatnot. So anyways, thanks again for watching. If you have any questions, drop us a note in the comment section. If you like this video, hope you like, share, and subscribe.